Calling all Stu's Wrestling Podcast fans, this is your opportunity to help out Stu. Vote for Stu's Wrestling Podcast in the BBC Sounds Listener's Choice Awards. Head to www.britishpodcastawards.com. The winner will be announced on Saturday, the 11th of July, 2020 at the British Podcast Awards. Don't forget to smack down a vote for Stu's Wrestling Podcast before midday, 6th of July. You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast, established 2019. Direct from the North Wales coast, his verbal skills definitely outweigh his wrestling ability. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Palmer.
A warm welcome to episode 38, and today's guest is the lead play-by-play commentator, Mr. Rich Bocchini, and you will also have known him as Rich Brennan when he was commentating on WWE SmackDown and WWE NXT. Rich doesn't just commentate on wrestling, he's covered other sports over the years, including ice hockey, and it was just great to get Rich on. As I always say, it's just a pleasure. I appreciate the commentary teams and announcers as much as the wrestlers. They bring a lot to the table, so it's cool speaking to these guys about their careers and their focal points on their careers and their opinions on things that have happened over the years. And Rich has got a lot to talk about on this show, especially with his time at WWE, as you'll get to hear. So, episode 38 with MLW's Rich Bocchini, formerly of WWE as Rich Brennan. Enjoy. Right, it's my pleasure and honour and a warm welcome all the way from the US. Rich, whereabouts in the US actually?
I am in Florida.
All the way
I don't want to say where in Florida because it's Florida. No, I'm in Florida. I'm in Gainesville, Gator country, and it's hot as hell here today. And it's starting to get warm out. But no, I'm excited to be talking to you. Over there in over there in Wales, we were talking before we hit the record button that I spent some time in Manchester and enjoyed my time over there. And I'm just excited to get to talk to you today here, Stewie.
It's Rich Bocchini.
Bocchini.
We're Rich Brennan in WWE, play-by-play announcer, commentator for MLW, which I'm a big fan of your commentary, and obviously going back to WWE as well, big fan.
I appreciate that. Thanks, man.
It's not just about the wrestlers for me. I like the broadcast side of it as well. I appreciate, it's a tough job, but you guys are so professional and brilliant. So it's just an honor to have you on, basically.
I appreciate that. Kind of like you, growing up, it was kind of the same thing. And even now, I get excited. Like if there's an announcer that I'm a fan of, and even though I'm in the business, I want to say I geeked out probably, more when I met, Mean Gene and Howard Finkel and some of those guys than I did when I met like Hulk Hogan or some of those guys. It was more of a big deal to me to meet like Mean Gene. That was awesome.
I met Gene.
Great guy, huh?
Yeah, he was brilliant. Just superb. He was obviously before he was ill, poorly, quite a while back. Well, 2015 it would have been, or 2016 at WrestleCon.
Yep.
Yeah. Just echoing your thoughts on what a legend, what a pro.
You ever meet Finkel?
Do you know what? No, absolutely gutted. When we were doing access and stuff like that, it just wasn't. He wasn't on the signings and stuff. I miss Piper as well. I miss Piper.
I never got to meet Roddy. I don't even know if I was anywhere where he was, but Finkel in particular, a lot like Gene, just a really good guy. Honestly, one of the nicest people in wrestling, and that's I'm sure you've been around this business long enough. It's difficult to say that this guy's salt of the earth type person, great guy, but Howard really was.
Just they don't make him like him anymore. I tell you.
Yeah, it's true.
He was a company man, wasn't he, through and through? Obviously, they've all echoed that.
Yeah, just a humble, appreciative guy. Just really loved what he did, and it's kind of sad that he passed, for sure.
I like that video with Gallows and Anderson did you see it?
No, I didn't. What?
Finkel phoned him to say where he was booked, but when he's telling Gallows where he's going and like where his rental car will be, he's doing it in the Finkel announcing voice. And Gallows, I'll send it to you later. It was hilarious. It was hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool. You know what? I think my roommate just let my cat in, so it might be good.
Okay, man. Right, before I hit any wrestling talk, Rich.
Yes.
I want to ask you, it's a bit of a cliched sentence this at the moment. I'm having to start off with this. How are things during lockdown for yourself?
Not all that different for me, to be honest. I work from home. My regular shoot job, I work from home, so I'm. Honestly, the only real difference for me is that I'm like every couple weeks I'm used to going somewhere for like MLW or somewhere, right? So like every 3-4 weeks I'm used to going and getting on an airplane, and that's obviously halted the last 2 months. But other than that, I work from home. I keep kind of weird hours to begin with the job that I have, and I'm starting to go a little bit nutty right now with no road trips. But other than that, I've been okay. Can I ask, how are you over there? How are you guys doing over there?
Just every day is the same. My full-time job at present, we're still furloughed. So we're on 80% of salary at the moment. My missus is still working. She works for the government. She's probation service, so she's working, but she's working from home 3 or 4 days a week. But yeah, just every day is the same, Rich. They just roll into one for me.
Pretty much the same here, man. Luckily I'm still working. Knock on wood, and I'm starting to get a little stir crazy right now. But hopefully there's some stuff going on soon.
It's what we all want, isn't it? Workers, fans. Yeah. We want it back. When did you first encounter pro wrestling, Rich? I'm looking forward to the answer of this.
I was probably, I don't know, 6-7 years old. I was young. I remember seeing it on TV, and I've joked before with people that I remember asking my dad and my uncle. So I knew what boxing was when I was little. And I knew how to explain boxing. And I remember seeing wrestling and saying, what's that other thing that's kind of like boxing, but it's not? They kind of kick each other and stuff, right? And it was either my dad or that's pro wrestling. Oh, and that, I want to say one of my first memories of it was definitely a WWF show. And it was definitely Captain Lou. I want to say he was cutting a promo. It's probably my first memory. And to tell you who was out there and what was going on necessarily, I don't really remember, but I just remember seeing that. And it would have been the old WWF tapings from probably like Hamburg or something like that, or Poughkeepsie, one of those places. And that was really my first exposure to it. But to actually really get into it and understand it at some level was probably around, not long after Hogan first won the title. So, probably like 84-ish, 1984-ish is probably when I first started like really paying attention to it.
That's further back than me. Fair play. Just about 6 years difference, 1990 over here for me. So, yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a couple of years on you, and I get to see really the tail end, I guess, of the territory era. So, like when I grew up, there were still a lot of the territories and the smaller shows that were around. I'd imagine by 1990, all the territories are pretty much dead by that. Like GWF was probably still around. Global was around at that point, I think. And, the Herb Abrams UWF was probably around 1990-ish. But, for me, it was really the two staples for me probably would have been the show on Monday night on USA, Primetime Wrestling, and then Saturday nights, like everybody else always talks, Saturdays at 6:05 on TBS. That was huge for me.
Who were some of the standout guys on the rosters for you when you were growing up? Which guys did you gravitate to? Who pulled you in?
The Road Warriors, Dusty, Jim Cornette, Midnight Express, just that whole era, really. The Russians, Ivan and Nikita, definitely my favorites were the Road Warriors. And I think like probably every other kid around, at that age, at that time, especially growing up in Rhode Island, which at the time we'd get WWF shows every month. So Hogan was, obviously a big deal as well. But there was something about the NWA and, Crockett Promotions and that whole thing. I get to watch the AWA as well. But there was something about that southern style of wrestling, and it was kind of gritty. It was kind of dirty. It looked more real. And I remember thinking that as a kid, like, this WWF stuff is, you can tell it's a show, right? But the NWA, yeah, that looks like it might be real. I know it's not, but it looks like it might be. You know what I mean? That was kind of my mindset.
That's cool. Did any events in the calendar tickle your taste buds? Some people get me to ask that again. Was there any events that stood out? Any pay-per-views?
Growing up as a kid,
Yeah.
I remember actually. I actually remember probably might have been the first or second WrestleMania that I didn't see. Actually, I remember being in the car. We actually drove to Florida from Rhode Island down to Florida. The first time we went to Florida, with mom and dad, my sister, and for those of you over in the UK, if you're not familiar, pull out a map of the US. You look at Providence, Rhode Island, which is up near Boston, and then look where Orlando is, and that's a long, long, long ride. It's like 24-hour drive. But I remember getting in the car and going, and I remember the Providence Civic Center had that big marquee on the outside. I remember seeing the thing for WrestleMania. I don't remember if it was the first one or the second one, but I remember seeing the sign for WrestleMania. Being like, man, I wish I could watch that. But I think probably like every other kid at that point, Hogan Andre, WrestleMania 3. I remember sitting there watching that. I really wanted to be able to get the Crockett stuff, the NWA stuff, some of the Starrcade stuff that was promoted, but in New England, you couldn't get, the closed circuit didn't have it. And by the time pay-per-view really became a thing, a lot's been written about how the WWF kind of shut out Crockett from pay-per-view. So we never really had the chance up in the New England area, or at least the cable company I had, to get any of the Starrcades, because I tried, I looked. So I had to wait for the video store to get the video. So again, you hear people talking about it like, some of the stuff that they rented at the video store, and like I can still remember seeing some of those videos there, Lords of the Ring, and just some of that stuff. And but yeah, WrestleMania 3 I think probably stands out for a lot of us, and some of the Starrcade stuff that I've been able to go back and watch. I just wish I would have been able to see it when it happened.
What stipulation matches did you like? Did you like watching certain stipulations of matches?
I remember thinking that the idea of a scaffold match was really cool. In theory, I don't know that those matches ever really paid off the way that they, because as a kid you're thinking, holy crap, they're going to be up on somebody's going to go flying off the sky. You picture somebody getting like, kind of like what New Jack did, like legitimately pitching somebody off the scaffold. But when you think about it, it makes sense that that's not really going to happen, right? But the scaffold match idea always seemed cool. Stipulation matches, any cage match, right? The match I think that probably stands out as a stipulation from very, very early on would be Magnum and Tully in the I Quit match. And I remember hearing so much about that. And I remember waiting for the video to come out, because I remember hearing about it after it happened, and they were really back selling it on TV. And when the video finally came out and I got to see that was awesome.
Rich, I know you've been involved in other sports with broadcasting, but I want to stick to wrestling for the time being, and we'll get into your broadcasting career, because I've done my research. I have done my research. I've done my best. When did you first get involved with wrestling in a professional capacity in broadcasting? That's what I'll ask.
First time I ever had anything to do with a wrestling show would have been 2009, September of 2009. I was the timekeeper for a show that my friend was the ring announcer for, and I just happened to go along with him for the ride. And hey, you want to come and hang out at this show? And I was just planning on just going and hanging out, and they needed somebody to ring the bell. So I was all geeked out. Oh, this is the coolest thing ever. When I really started getting involved was when I had moved to Houston, and I actually kind of sort of knew the guy that ran an NWA promotion in Houston. Kind of got hooked up with them, trained a little bit, actually did some in-ring training because I wanted to referee originally, and went and learned how to run the ropes and learned how to, get myself thrown out of the ring and that kind of stuff without killing myself, because I wanted to ref. But when it came down to it, I refed a little bit, but when it came down to it, they're like, well, you work in, you've been in broadcasting and radio, and the guy that ran it didn't want to be the ring announcer anymore. So I kind of got roped into doing that, even though I wanted to ref. So there was that kind of graduated maybe a year later to working for Booker T and getting to work with him and train with him a little bit, and just kind of learn from him. And from there, next thing I knew, I was at WWE. It happened really, really, really quick, probably quicker than it should have. I joke now that like my wrestling career has gone backwards because I kind of like not necessarily started out in WWE, but I joke that I kind of got there quicker than I should have. And now I've been working the independents, and now I'm really learning a lot more that I probably wish I would have known back then. So again, it's a backwards progression for me. Basically, WWE paid me to learn how to become I don't want to say like to become one of the best indie announcers in the business, right? But it's like they taught me everything I needed to know and then canned me right as I was starting to get good at it. So I was able to take what I learned there and apply it to the independents.
Did Booker T put a word in for you for that position?
Yeah, for sure.
I know that sounds obvious to ask, but I thought I'd just ask it just to...
Yeah, it was one of those things when I was working for him, and my ex-wife actually kind of pushed me to talk to him a little bit more. I had applied for a gig with the Houston Texans, the football team, and went and interviewed with them, and it didn't work out. But their broadcaster was just, he'd listen to my stuff and he was impressed with my work, and he was kind of, it's a shame, like you should be calling sports somewhere. Except at the time I wasn't. Like I called hockey. I was in Houston. I had a corporate job at the time. And I really didn't, really wasn't happy at that point. So the guy at Mark at the Texans had heard my stuff. He said, oh, you should be, really be calling sports somewhere. And I told my wife at the time, I told her that. She was the one that kind of nudged me and said, well, you should talk to Booker. And I was kind of weary about asking him because a lot of guys would go train at his school with the idea that, well, Booker's going to get me to WWE. And that was, that for me, that was honestly, it was the furthest thing from my mind when I got started. Because like I said, I wanted to referee. I had no grand delusions of, going to WWE. It never really even crossed my mind. It was just kind of, I wanted to do it for fun because I was always a fan. I just wanted to referee and just be part of it. But it was after that interview and talking, my wife, she kind of nudged me. So I talked to him, and he was like, he told me he thought I was ready right then, at least to, to learn. So, I put something together, and, that kind of started the process. And it was probably about, a little less than a year later when, I got a tryout, and, the rest is history. So book definitely helped for sure.
I just thought I'd ask, obviously, I wanted to see how it came to fruition for you. How was your experience in WWE? I know it's quite a broad one.
Simultaneously the coolest and worst experience of my life. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it was a dream come true.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And I say an offbeat dream because it was like, it was never, and I just want to make it clear, like it was never my goal when I started out as an announcer, like I'm going to go in and announce wrestling. I always thought it would be cool to do it, but it was like, how do you even get that? How do you even do that? How do right? How does that even happen? So it was never even really in the back of my head besides like, oh, that'd be cool if I get to do that someday. Right. But it's, you're there, you're in that bubble, you're in that world, you're in that, you're in that kind of cocoon, and you're seeing how everything comes together. And it really is a fascinating, it's a fascinating company. There's so many different moving parts. It really is like, it's a lot to take in, but to go along with that, there's just a lot of, like any entertainment or probably, any sports or whatever, there's just a lot of politics and a lot of backstabbing and a lot of, if you're not part of the right crew of people, then, you're probably not going to be, it's like anything else, right? If you go in and you want to politic, I don't want to make it sound like it's sour grapes or anything like that. I enjoyed my time there in many ways, and I also hated my time there in many ways, to be frank and to be honest. And a lot of that has to do with just a lot of quite frankly, a lot of the bullshit that you have to put up with when you work there. But by and large, a good experience for sure.
I don't know whether to ask the next question now.
No, yeah, go. Hey, I'm an open book, so
yeah, that's fine. You worked across different brands. Obviously, you were with NXT for a long time, weren't you? But you're also on SmackDown. What was it like working the different areas of the company and the different brands?
NXT
how was that for you?
NXT was awesome. I loved working NXT. SmackDown was cool because it was SmackDown, second biggest show at the time in the company. I remember when I was told that I was going to do SmackDown, I wasn't ready. Even in my head, I'm not ready for this. And I remember saying, I remember telling Michael Cole, I'm like, you sure about this? Like, no, you'll be fine. And I was on the show for 4 months or 5 months, and they brought in Ronaldo. So who knows? I don't know if that was going to be the long-term plan anyway. And I kind of figured that because I knew they were switching from Sci-Fi going over to USA. I kind of figured that I wouldn't be calling that show. I kind of figured that Michael Cole, that they would stick Cole, because that's what they always do. Cole and always ends up back in those spots. So, it was cool. Again, it was cool. I'm thankful. I realized that there's not a lot of people who have had that opportunity. So again, I don't want to make it sound like sour grapes, but on the same time, I wish that I would have had a little bit more time, just doing NXT or main event, superstars, really NXT, and just really learning and understanding. Because here's the thing: when you're there and you're doing that, it's not about calling matches anymore. When you're the play-by-play guy, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's more about the traffic and the broadcast, and about pitching to packages and doing those types of things. That's why Michael Cole is there. I love Cole. A lot of people crap on him. They don't think he's a good announcer, but there's a reason why Vince continually turns to Michael Cole, because he knows the way that Vince wants things, or that Kevin Dunn wants things. And I've seen Cole legitimately go out there with no run sheet and just get produced through the headset, and he does it seamlessly. It's not an easy thing to do. I wish I would have had a little more time to kind of hone those skills. I've gotten better at it now. Yeah. I'm probably, I'm definitely still not at Cole's level when it comes to that stuff. But doing MLW and some of the other stuff I've done, I've just got a better grasp of that stuff at this point. But again, like I said before, my wrestling announcing career has gone completely backwards. But it was cool. It was fun. NXT was really where my heart was. I wish I could have called that show a little bit longer, but again, it was was what it was.
I just to go back to Cole, it's people online behind a keyboard with no broadcast experience turning around and saying the things. They got no license whatsoever they couldn't do it. They wouldn't be able to do what.
No, most people, and this isn't talking. I'm not trying to slag anybody, but most people, you put on a headset or sit in front of a mic, you would have no idea what to say. And I don't mean you personally. I just most fans who think, "Wow, this guy sucks," or this, whatever. They couldn't do it, and that's not to say that they should be able to know how to do it. And that's also not to say that they're not allowed to criticize. Of course, they're allowed to criticize, but you're right. You know what I mean? Most people that sit there, this blah 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 blah. This guy sucks or that guy sucks. Like, have an opinion, that's fine. But I know what you're saying with the keyboard folks or the Twitter folks that just want to crap on everything. I
come away from it now, Rich. I used to get riled up and start, that's what people want. So I just they can have their opinion, as they say, but I don't think it's unjust what they're coming out with half the time.
90% of the time. I mean, listen, like I can't play hockey at a high level or, baseball at a high level, but, I'm going to go to the game and I'm going to sit there and, I'm going to second guess the coach. Why did he, the Red Sox and Yankees in, game 7 of 03. Why did he leave Pedro in? He should have pulled Pedro in the 7th inning or whatever, right? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but, there's always that as a fan. Like I'm sure with football, soccer, whatever, there's people that, why did the manager do this? Or, some of it's, fans are definitely allowed to criticize, but, in particular when it comes to, I think when it comes to wrestling announcing, it's, I think it seems a lot easier on the outside than it really is. Cause it really is a difficult thing to be good at it.
Rich, did you have much interaction with Mr. McMahon? That's what I wanted to ask.
Not a ton here and there. He knew my name. I'd see him in Gorilla. Hello, Rich. Hello, sir. That type of stuff. Yeah. He was in my headset a handful of times. I remember calling the show at Madison Square Garden, and he was in my headset. Funny story that I can tell you is when John Cena came out. John comes out and he usually does a thing where he stands there and he talks to the camera. He's like, he'll stand there and look around and then he does that thing and he says something to the camera and then he runs down to the ring, right? So out comes John Cena and he doesn't say anything and he's standing there. So I start talking and almost right as I start talking, John starts talking. Wouldn't you know it? Of course, right? And all of a sudden in the headset, I hear, lay out, John's talking. And my asshole would have puckered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just kind of, right? You don't know what to do. And then, so I let John do his thing. And then, it felt like forever. All you hear is talk. All right. So I remember that. But Vince was, Michael Cole, I think, who was producing me 99% of the time, I'm sure got an earful from Vince. Because I don't think Vince somebody was asking me this the other day. Did Vince like you as an announcer? And I said, no. He said, did Vince hate you as an announcer? And I said, no. He said, does Vince like anybody as an announcer? And I was like, no. Because I think that's true. I don't think Vince likes anybody as an announcer besides himself.
He was very good at it as well when he did it. I liked him on the mic. Stuff doing the I always enjoyed Vince for the most part, and still he started screaming all the time in the early 90s. Like, all right, enough. But it's kind of one of those things where he knew how to do it and he knew what he wanted, and he just expects that you're gonna know what he's thinking, right? Yeah.
And that kind of brings me back to my Michael Cole point. And it also kind of brings me around to like a Bruce Pritchard point where you've heard people talk before. I think Bruce has even said this, like he knows how Vince's mind works. He knows what Vince wants. He's like the Vince whisperer. Cole is in many ways the same way. He knows what Vince wants. So, take that for what it's worth.
Turnbuckle TV is the home of UK Wrestling On Demand, featuring over 40 UK wrestling promotions and other wrestling-related channels. Subscribe today from just $1.99 and start your free 1-month trial now.
GTG, often imitated but never duplicated. Kind of broad at the shoulder, narrow at the hip. No other promotion give us any lip. We the best of the best, the beasts of the East. SOS, simply out of sight. GTG.
What he said, good times guaranteed.
I'm going to fast forward now. How did MLW come about in 2017? How did you end up with Major League Wrestling? Come away from WWE now.
So the long and short of it is, I was doing an independent show in Orlando, and I worked that show with MSL, Mr. St. Laurent, who's the talent relations VP or for MLW. So he and I worked that show, and it wasn't an MLW show; it was another company. and a pretty good show actually, but nobody came out for it. But like I remember Shayna Baszler was on the show, and then Kyle O'Reilly was on the show, Tom Lawler. Like it was a really good show. And I worked that show with MSL, and he kind of tipped me off. He's like, "Hey, there might be something brewing." Well, what's going on? Well, I don't know yet, but blah 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 blah. We'll see how this goes. Anyway, next thing I know, oh yeah, okay, MLW is coming back, and we want you to be the play-by-play guy. Or we want you to be one of the announcers. So, okay, cool, let's do it. At the time we were running, the idea was to run in Orlando, which for me at the time, I was living in Orlando. So that was easy. That was a no-brainer. Like, okay, sure, and that came, I was doing a little bit of wrestling at that point, but not, I think I was just doing Fest in Gainesville. I don't really think I was doing anything else. Cause for a while I was just kind of like hands off. I just didn't really want anything to do with it. And I, like a lot of other people that have been in the business for a while, you kind of get sucked back in, right? And I'm glad I did. I've had fun with MLW. Getting to work with Shivani, getting to work with Cornette, and some of the other people. Getting to Dr. Tom worked behind the scenes with us for a little bit. A lot of other people that I've gotten to meet and pick their brains, and I've had fun with it.
That was going to be my next question in relation to how Shivani and Mr. Cornette. How was it? Maybe just go into a bit more depth about doing. So
Court Bauer, who runs MLW, had called me up and asked me, okay, this is what we have going on with MLW. You're interested in doing it? Yeah, okay. So he calls me up one day and he says, hey, I wanted to let you know who your brother, because the idea was it was going to be one show at first, right? That's how it was pitched. I think the idea was always to do more, but we pitched it as one show at first. So anyway, he calls me up and he says, hey, I got your broadcast partner. I said, okay. He said, and I remember where I was when he called me. I can still picture this in my head. He calls me up and he says, how do you feel about working with Doink? And I kind of, I was like, didn't Matt Bourne pass away a couple years ago? Doink. And I, all these thoughts are running through my head. And, I finally said to him, Court, as long as the check clears, I don't care. Right. Thinking to myself, Doink. This totally goes against everything that it was pitched as. And so then he starts laughing. And he's like, your broadcast partner's Tony Schiavone. So it went from me laughing laughing like Doink, thinking like, what the, to, okay, you're gonna work with Schiavone, who legitimately is one of the reasons that I even became an announcer in the first place, right? So for sure, awesome. So getting to work with Tony was super cool. And then Cornette too, that was a surprise. Hey, guess what? You're gonna be working with Cornette. Really? Awesome. I loved working. I know Jim gets a lot of shit from people. I loved working with Jim. I think he's a great guy. I love him.
You will not change that man. I like him, but I can see why people get pissed off at him. But he's always been the same.
Well, here's something that he's said, and I think it's worth repeating. And I'm not a 100% Cornette apologist. He says some things that I'm like, but he knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows why he's doing it. And something that he said that I think is important to keep in mind is, you don't know where James E. Cornette begins and Jim Cornette ends, and vice versa, right? Jim Cornette, the wrestling character, where does that end, and where does James E. Cornette, the man, begin? And you'll never know the answer to that question. I'll never know the answer to that question. Does he hate Joey Ryan as much as he says he hates Joey Ryan? I don't know. I'm sure he hates the dick flip, but I don't know. I don't know that he hates. I don't know. But I've often thought that somebody, and I like Joey Ryan. I have no problems with Joey Ryan at all. But I've often said, like, they should be sending Cornette some royalties, because it's like every time Cornette shits on them, I'm sure their T-shirt sales go up. So, every protagonist needs an antagonist, and I'm convinced that I'm convinced that Jim is sincere in it, but I'm also convinced that there's a lot of work that's going, he's working a lot of people, like the whole stuff, the whole recently, like with, the whole Becky Lynch stuff and all that. He's clearly working people. And everybody gets all upset and fired. Oh, we're going to cancel Cornette and all this other stuff. It's like, it's the biggest heel in wrestling today.
Lives and breathes the business.
Yep. And to me, it is an important distinction because, as much as I enjoy parts of modern wrestling, there's a lot of it that I hate. And, the idea of the whole idea that it's a magic show, right?
Yeah.
That we don't need to be reminded it's fake. And I think, Cornette may have even said this on a recent show. Like you watch, I don't know if you've ever seen Penn and Teller's show.
Oh yeah,
right?
No, of Penn and Teller, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, right. So even on that show, if they know that magician's trick, they don't say out loud, "Oh, you did this trick by doing this, and that." They go up to him and they whisper it to him, and the guy says, "Yeah, you got me." Right? That's the magic and that's the art. And I don't think we need to continually beat people over the head, reminding them that what we're doing is, quote unquote, fake. But the magic is making people forget that it's fake. That's my soapbox for the day.
How do you find the scheduling? Obviously, I spoke to Brian Pillman Jr. about this. Block taping 4 episodes. That must be quite cool for your schedule.
Yeah, it's a long day. I'll tell you that. When you're sitting there from for 4.5 hours taping, when you get to match 16, oh man, you're just worn out. But it is easier getting a lot of stuff done. But what that also means is that there's a lot more post-production work because there's so many things that can change between the time that you tape and the time that the show comes out. And you don't necessarily know, you kind of have an idea, well, this match is going to air, it's going to air this week, but it might not air until late, you know what I mean? So you don't necessarily know where things are going to fit. So in your storytelling, that makes that a little bit more difficult. So it just means that there's a lot more to clean up post-production, whereas you're doing it week to week, that has its advantages too, because like you're in real time and you know where you are. So there's pros and cons to both for sure.
Are you still allowed to work for other promotions, or are you exclusive now to MLW? How was that working now?
So right now I can work for pretty much anybody right now. I'm not under contract right now. I'm just, one off each show. Hopefully that's, we may change that at some point, but, like I do Defy out of Seattle. That's not anything that I plan on giving up anytime soon. I think with MLW, I've got some, we're going to talk a little bit more about this stuff here as we get back to more normalcy. But I think with them, as long as I'm not doing any other wrestling TV necessarily, I don't think they really have much of a problem. Like if I showed up on Impact, I don't think they'd be too happy. Yeah. But, or AEW or something. But I don't see that happening anytime soon anyway. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, for the most part, I can do it. I think as long as it's not TV, I think I'm fine.
It's nice that you have that freedom, Rich.
Well, to be honest, I'm not. It's not a full-time thing for me, right? So, if I'm not having fun, I'm not enjoying it, then I'm not going to do it. So there's a little bit of that as well. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy doing it. And if it's not paying my bills, then I want to have freedom to be able to kind of pick and choose what I do. So, cool. Hopefully as MLW grows, hopefully that changes, and hopefully it is like my soul. I would love that to be the, if that's the only wrestling that I did, that I'm not opposed to that either. But financially, we have to grow the thing to get to that point. That's what we're trying to do.
Do you know the big thing that stood out for me watching it on Free Sports over here? The attendances have been amazing. You've had some really good crowds for the shows wherever you've gone. Really, really good. The crowds have been amazing. That's one thing that stood out for me.
Chicago's always good. Philadelphia is always good. Dallas is always really good. The last couple shows that have been on before the anthology stuff that we're doing now was out of Mexico. That was a little bit different. The last taping, we had some logistical issues, obviously with the coronavirus and stuff. With the last set of tapings, we literally squeezed that in before the whole world shut down. But the crowds are into it, and we have our core cities where people are. They know what's going on. They're familiar with the content. They know who to cheer, who to boo. They know that Fatu and Contra. You know what I mean? They know what the whole thing is. So,
cool.
so it's not like going into a new market. New York is decent sometimes, but sometimes they have New Yorkers' tendency. That crowd sometimes they've seen so much, and we run into the same thing in Florida too, where they see so much wrestling that they're kind of like, eh. Right, they just kind of sit there. But you go to like the Chicagos and Dallases and stuff, and they're really hot for it.
Which guys in MLW you're enjoying watching? Not to say you're playing favourites.
I think Fatu's amazing. Fatu's very, very. He's a special competitor. The whole Contra unit thing is cool. Pillman's a kid that I've really seen grow and really mature in the last 2 years. Those are guys that stand out to me. Obviously, there's so many guys there. Tom Lawler, I enjoy what he does. I like Davey Boy. I don't want to feel like the Von Erichs. There are so many different flavors to what we do at MLW. I think most fans would be hard pressed not to find something that they like. Right. For me personally, the Contra unit stuff kind of has some of that old school wrestling feel to me. So I kind of like some of the stuff that they're doing. Joseph with the railroad spike and burning people and stuff. I think it's pretty cool. I like that.
I love Mance Warner, but not necessarily for the extreme style. It's the promos that hook me in with Mance. He is incredible with the promo. That guy.
Yeah, he's a fantastic talker. I like him, and he's a good dude. He's a funny guy too, and a very, very smart guy.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Yeah.
You talk to him one-on-one away from, and not to kill kayfabe or whatever, but he's got he's got a decent job at home, and he's a smart guy, and he's able to take all of that and really make the Mance Warner character come to life.
It's distinguishable and original, which
that's
the hard thing to do, isn't it, for these guys? And then I'm not into the extreme wrestling. I like a normal match, but yeah, Mance definitely, and Hammerstone. Like you say, we could list them. We could list the guys.
Absolutely. There have been guys that have grown with MLW. That for me, I think it's pretty cool to see the Hammerstone, how he's grown over the past few years. The Von Erichs, the Pillmans, all those guys, to see how they've come along and really grown into into what they are. It's just my hope that at some point a greater amount of wrestling fans are able to see it.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, MJF leaving due to obviously Holiday. I'm not saying Holiday and Hammerstone didn't get time in the promos and stuff. They've all had the same amount of time, but it's also going to help Gino Medina out, isn't it?
I think so. Losing Max to AEW is it's difficult because he's 22 or 20. I mean, the kid's legitimately, he's a prodigy. He really is, and he's so inquisitive about everything in the business. I remember him coming up to sit up with Cornette and I once. He was just asking us questions and production questions. I remember we mentioned something about doing wild lines. And he's like, well, what are wild lines? And we explained to him that. And for anybody listening, a wild line is when you do your 4 weeks of TV, a wild line is when you go in later on, you have to add something later to fix something, basically. That's what a wild line is. And, he was saying, well, how does that work? How do you do this? Asking questions just about everything because he wants to learn everything. He wants to know everything. And just as far as his promos, name a better promo in wrestling today. There's really no one.
Going to be hard pushed.
Yeah.
100%. And he's only 24.
Is he 24 now? See, is he 21? Is he? I guess. Yeah.
He said,
the time has gone by, so I guess he is 24.
He
right?
said in a promo on Dynamite, I'm 24 along those lines. I heard it last week when he's in there with Wardlow. So yeah, he is saying he's 24, Rich, as it stands. But he might be 25 next week.
I still think I guess I met him when he was probably 21. So I'm just stuck right there, like he's 21 or 22. But no, he's
Willed at his feet. I tell you,
yes,
100%. Many years of him, and like you're saying, he wants to learn about everything. So that's the cool thing with him.
It really is, and like you see him work in the ring too, and he works such a simple style. There's no wasted movement. He doesn't do stuff that he doesn't need to do. And he's smart. I remember working an MLW show, and without naming names, somebody wanted to do some ridiculous move off the top to put him through a table, and he was like, not a chance. And I kind of had to. Good for him for saying no to that.
Yeah.
So he's if he plays his cards right and he's smart and he doesn't get into trouble, he's gonna do very well for himself.
Which guys maybe who are not in the picture across all companies now and brands, which guys can you see being stars of the future, Rich? Not that I don't mean like you're playing favourites, because there's so many, but yeah, if you could maybe give us a few names that you think stars into the future who are destined for superstardom.
I'm trying to think of I haven't really called any I haven't called any matches in 2 months now, right? So I'm kind of, I guess I have to shake off some of the rust. I'm just trying to think. There's a handful of guys at Defy that, that have worked the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle area for a long time, that really haven't had a chance over, the previous couple years to really get around. Because for a lot of times, Seattle was kind of like off on its own island. There really wasn't a lot of wrestling in the Pacific Northwest. Guys like the American Guns, I think, are an incredible tag team. Randy Myers, who's been around for a long time, is such a unique character. He's the Defy champion now. And one name in particular, actually, that I think a lot of fans are going to get to know in the next few years is Shaft, who he was the Defy champion, lost the title to Myers. I really think Shaft has a future. I think once his promos kind of catch up to him. I think he's got the size. He's a powerhouse type guy. I think Shaft will do pretty well. He's definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
That's cool. Right, Rich, you've been involved. I've just done what I do every bloody time. I'll redo that. We can cut it. It's fine. It'll be slick when this gets put together, Rich. I promise you.
Perfect.
I've got an editor. I've got a freelance videographer who edits it. I'm not editing it. It'd look like a sack of shit if I edited it. So, yeah. Right. You've worked many other sports in broadcasting. Could you tell the viewers, listeners, a little bit about this? Go into a bit of, your other sporting backgrounds in broadcasting.
Well, I spent 15 years or so in pro hockey in the minors in the U.S. I worked in the American Hockey League for a bit, which is AAA. Similar to baseball, it's the next step is the NHL. Worked in AA hockey in the Central Hockey League for a number of years. I did that. I called some baseball, did some arena football. Was a sports anchor doing TV sports for a little bit. Did radio, radio news reports. I've done that. I did soccer, the Houston Dynamo and MLS. I was the PA announcer there. I've been able to do a number of different things. I don't know if I said baseball, but I called baseball. And a couple of years ago, I actually did a show called Grid, 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 which is basically like a team CrossFit competition, for lack of a better description. And it was literally one of those things where I got a call to do it about 2 weeks ahead of time, and I had no idea what it was. Basically got a crash course in it and went and called, I forget how many, 6 or 7 matches or something like that. And I'm pretty sure they folded. They don't exist anymore. It was a very niche sport, but it was actually really interesting. And it was kind of cool to go and do that. But really my background's hockey.
Yeah.
And I would love to, if the season ever if hockey ever starts back up here again, I would love to be able to call hockey again at some point for sure.
That's cool. That's cool, man. My next one, have you got any tips for budding sports journalists? What would be Rich Bocchini's tips for people coming into the industry?
Don't.
Sorry?
Don't.
Don't. Right, okay.
Become an accountant.
Can you elaborate on don't? if you can elaborate on don't, I'd be grateful. But if you can't, it's fine.
No, it's a lot of ups and downs doing this. Probably more downs than ups, and it's feast or famine for most of us. It's a labor of love. There's not always a lot. There's money in it at the top. There's not always a lot of money in it unless you're at the top. Now, having said that, I've been able to survive. I've been able to make a living and have a roof over my head and a vehicle that has too many miles on it at this point. It can be a very, very tough line of work, not only professionally but mentally too, because mentally you have to be able to deal with honestly the constant criticism that comes from not only the public, but as I mentioned, if you work at a place like WWE as an announcer, everything you say, everything you do is scrutinized. Every word that comes out of your mouth is turned upside down, sideways, shined, and suggested that you could have said it better.
Yeah.
And that becomes kind of taxing after a while because you're always on edge that you don't want to screw up. And you kind of just have to, it's weird. You almost just kind of have to be, I don't want to say oblivious to it, but you just kind of have to go and do what you do and not worry about it. And it takes some confidence, I guess, to get there. And I think it's anybody who's in any kind of performing art, even if you're an athlete, or a musician or something, there's something within us that there's something that compels us to perform, and that outside validation in many ways is important, even though a lot of us say it isn't. Some of it is. You want that external validation. The trick is not letting that external validation become the be all end all, because that can really, I know a lot of people, especially in wrestling, that they live for that. And if they're not getting that, their whole world is upside down. You kind of need to get to a point where what you're doing is what you want it to be and what your boss wants it to be, and the rest, everybody else can, the fans, quite frankly, can go to hell. And I know I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying fuck the fans, because I'm not.
No.
But when you do it, you have to get to a point where you're confident in what you're doing, and where you know that what you're doing is what the guy who's paying you wants you to do. And that really becomes what it is, as opposed to, maybe the more punk rock mindset. Well, I'm just going to do what I want. I'm going to do it the way I want it. Okay, well, if you want to work at WWE, it's not going to happen. You have to do it how they want it. So, so when I say don't get into it, a lot of people get into sports broadcasting or wrestling or, whatever, thinking that it's going to be, they probably think in the back of their head, well, it's tough, but they don't really necessarily know how tough it can be. Like I said, man, I've been in some form of broadcasting for close to 20 years now. I've slept on buses, slept on the floors of buses. I slept in the stairway of a bus for arena football. I've made next to no money, and I've made great money and flown first class and stayed in the top hotels working with the WWE. So, yeah, and now that I'm back doing the indies, it's kind of like being back in minor league hockey, where I'm staying, instead of staying at the West Inn or the Hyatt Regency, you're staying at the Days Inn. So it's all part and parcel. But if you're going to get into this thinking that you're going to make a ton of money, don't, because you might. God bless you if you do, but you're probably not going to.
That's good. That's sound advice. You've done it for many years, man. That was quite a barometer, that as well, Rich. Saying
I hope it doesn't sound bitter. I hope it doesn't sound bitter.
No, not at all. No, it's honest. It's not bitter. I think you've just been honest about it, which that's commendable, man. You've been honest. Honesty is the best policy, my mum says.
I try to. Sometimes I'm too honest for my own good, unfortunately. But that's I don't know any other way to do it.
Be yourself, man. That's it.
Yep.
What you can do. Right, Rich. Can you please plug your social media for the viewers, listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, every week on MLW, which you can check out over in the UK on Free Sports or on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, put in Major League Wrestling Fusion. You can find us there. But as for my personal, I'm on Twitter at Rich Bocchini, BOCCHINI, Rich Bocchini, and you can hit me up there. Again, aside from MLW, there's Defy Wrestling out of Seattle that I'm the voice for. Warrior Wrestling out of Chicago, which is more of a fundraiser type thing, but they do a great job there. Fast Wrestling in Gainesville, want to plug them as well. But as far as my Twitter goes, if you hit me up on there, I'm actually working on, without giving away too much detail, because I'm still in the planning stages of this one, but I'm actually putting together, I don't know how many parts it's going to be, but basically, if you want to call it like the master class or a seminar where I really want to dive into kind of explaining pro wrestling commentary, what it really is and what to look for, how to do it, and really kind of explaining some of the psychology behind it. So that's something that I'm working on with the help of a few other people. I'm probably about halfway to where I want it to be. But that's something that hopefully within the next 6 months or maybe a year, hopefully sooner, I'll be able to unveil that. And I'm kind of deciding, is it going to be a 2-week thing or a 4-week thing or video or, exactly kind of the logistics of how I'm going to do it. But I've got most of the content put together, and, that's something that hopefully I'll be unveiling pretty soon.
That's cool, man. No, I look forward to seeing that once it's all done and you've completed it. That'll be cool to see.
For sure.
Rich Bocchini, play-by-play commentator for MLW Fusion, Major League Wrestling. Thank you very much for coming on today. I appreciate it, Rich. You spent
Stu, a pleasure. More than happy to talk to the fans, and always a pleasure talking to somebody over in the UK for sure.
A big thank you to Stephen Ash and Ed Dowling for producing the track. It's Stu's Wrestling Podcast, the theme. So thank you very much for that, lads. Much appreciated. Love it. It fits really well, so cheers. Thanks to you. Big thank you to Mike Angus for the show intro, as always. Superb. Chris Dutton, thank you very much for editing once again. Appreciate it, buddy. And also to Lee, who does my website. Lee puts the stuff up on the website. Without you guys, I'd be screwed. So once again, as always, appreciate everything you do for me and the time you spend doing the things you do for me. It means a lot, guys.